So this video covers iWars Lab 3, database design. In this lab, we're going to talk about how to edit the database that underlies all the modeling in iWars. And in doing so, we're going to create a new weapon. So first thing we have to do is load iWars, and we have to create a new scenario and load the terrain. We can select any terrain that we want, but just for ease, I'm going to use the McKenna mount site again. All right, so the program is loading, and the first thing I'm going to do is go up here to where it says Default iWars Database and Launch Database Editor. So the database pops up, and you can see that it has a number of folders underneath it, and all of this just contains the data that we need for our for modeling things out. So for example, we go to methodologies, we can look at casualty assessment, non-bursting, and we can look at if a human is shooting a AK-47 and they hit another human, the incapacitation times depending on where they hit. So there's a lot of good things in here. We're going to dive into all of that in a few minutes. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new database. And I'm just going to call it Test Weapon Database. And you can see it pops up right here. So we can jump right in and start creating a new weapon. So if we expand Firearms and click on Firearms, we can click on Create New Item. And we're going to call this Test Weapon. Description, 5.56 millimeter rifle. The weight is going to be 3.7104 kilograms. Reload, select weapon time, 6.57 seconds. Munition capacity, 30. Cyclic rate of fire, 700 per minute. Burst size, 3. And range 50, 125 meters. So all of these are properties of the rifle itself. However, we also have to define the properties of the rifle as it interacts with ammunition. So this weapon is going to fire the 5.56 millimeter ball. And so if we expand that, we can now enter in values. So 964.557, standard deviation 0, minimum range 0. Maximum range is going to be set to 2653. Beta drag coefficient, and this is used for the physics-based modeling of the weapon, 0.0217. Gamma drag coefficient, 0.015. All right, so we're looking pretty good right now. We should be able to now save our database. Typically when we hit save, a box will appear asking you to enter in information. Just enter in what you modified and then hit enter. And then we can keep going from there. All right. So next thing we're going to do is allow a human to use our test weapon. So if we go up here to Agent Systems and scroll down to Human, and you can see right here that they're currently not allowed to fire a test weapon. And so what we're going to do is click Allowed. Now we're going to expand that, and we're only going to select bipod, no mount, and tripod. So again, the test weapon is going to be a modified version of the M16. So everything's going to be very similar to the M16 definitions. All right, so now that we have that defined, the next thing we can do is start entering in the casualty assessment data. So if we go down to methodologies, casualty assessment non-bursting, and we can start filtering. So first thing we're going to do is filter, add a new filter, firing weapon, an M16. I already had firing system human set from earlier when I was showing you all things. And but right now you can see that this is the casualty data for any time a human is shooting a M16. So I'm going to export this to a CSV file because this will allow us to edit this in Microsoft Excel. So I'm just going to save it over here into my Documents folder. Now, if I open my Documents folder, You can see the file right here. I can open it up. I can change my weapon so that it goes from being the M16 to being the test weapon, and change that for all 1,675 rows. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to set the incapacitation probability to 1 for every scenario, for every row here. And what this is saying is that one shot, one kill. Basically, if a person gets hit with a round from the test weapon, they get incapacitated. And so that's kind of a new thing with our test weapon. It just has a much higher lethality than our existing one. So I'm going to hit File, Save, and I'm going to close it. And now I'm going to re-import it in. Import CSV data, casualty assessment non-bursting. Now if I switch my weapon to test weapon on the filter, I should be able to scroll over here and see that all my incapacitation probabilities are 1. So yeah, so we exported and imported it back in properly. The other two things that we have to also look at are delivery accuracy and rate of fire. For this example, we're going to assume that everything's the same for the M16 as it is for the test weapon. So I'm going to go to delivery accuracy. I'm going to select my firearm to be the M16. I'm going to select my agent system to be human. Now I'm going to export this. I can just put in the same folder, delivery accuracy. Now if I open that, you can see that I have my horizontal and vertical biases along with my range errors. You have fixed, variable, and random error. So we're going to change the firearm from being M16 to test weapon and do that for all of these. I'm going to hit Save, Close, and now I'm going to re-import that data. So now if I change my weapon from the M16 to the test weapon, I shouldn't see any change because we copied and pasted the data. So everything looks the same. We can see that these values are not 0, which is the default, which means we imported it properly. We're going to do the same thing for rate of fire. So we go to rate of fire. We're going to filter it to just look at the M16. We're going to do add new filter, firing system, select human. And what we're going to do now is we're going to export CSV data, rate of fire. Open this back up and change the weapon to be test weapon. Save. And now I'm going to re-import that back in. And now if I go to my test weapon, you can see that it has the same values as the M16. Alright, so we're looking pretty good right now. It looks like we have everything done for defining our new weapon. Everything's the same as the M16, has the same rate of fire, same delivery accuracy. The only thing that changes is the casualty assessment. Casualty assessment model has it so that if a person gets shot, they're automatically killed 100%. That's what that one indicated. Alright, so now we're looking pretty good. I'm going to close, I'm going to save. I'm going to save and edit and exit out of the database. Alright, so now I have my terrain right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create my scenarios. So I'm just going to pick an open piece of terrain, blue force. I'm going to have a blue, let's go for a fire team. Right here. And I'm going to switch them to urban close assault. Now I'm going to add in a set of red agents. Move them up here. Have them face the blue agents. and also put them as urban close assault. Let's just see how far out. So they're only like 20 meters apart. Let's get them further apart. Let's put them about at 50 meters. All right. And so now what we can do is we can assign weapons. So for our blue force, I'm going to turn off those range circles. We can scroll down and set their weapon. So click selected weapon, switch it to test weapon, get rid of the M4. And from the drop-down menu, select test weapon, M4. Then for select munition, 5.56. All right, so I'm going to do that for all three. All right. All right, so it looks like all my folks are holding the test weapon. Now for my bad guys over here, I'm going to have them only using M4s. So let's go with our fire team leader, M4. I'm going to switch their protection to no armor. Let's go no armor. Switch our saw gunner to using an M4. Ammo. Switch our grenadier to using the M4. So no armor. M4. 5.56. Our rifleman should be set to M4 already. No armor. Alright, so just to check, no armor, no armor, no armor. Alright, we also have to define the mission, of course, for all of them. So if we go to Mission Builder, and the mission is going to be very straightforward. We can assign the same mission for all of them. It's just going to be engage. So shoot. Let's go engage, retarget, file, save scenario. Just going to call this Lab3. So let's close. If I did everything right, they should see each other and start engaging. And keep in mind that even though it looks like they might be hitting them, they might not, the bullets might be going right past them or whatnot. Also keep in mind that even if an incapacitation is scheduled, so in this case an incapacitation is scheduled for that agent, they can still fire. All right, so we can see that we have all red agents out. So I'm going to save the scenario file, save as, and let's call this Lab3 test weapon. And I'm going to create a base scenario now. I'm going to save it also as file, let's call it Lab3 M16. And I'm going to change my blue forces, instead of using the test weapon, switch them all to using the M16. So we have to add that weapon, switch it, make sure they have ammo. Even though they were previously carrying 5.56 rounds, when you switch the weapon, even if it uses the same ammunition, you still have to update the rounds. All right, so it looks like this is set. Let's save. And so now we have our two scenarios. So I'm going to now go into, I'm going to load up brass. Okay, create a new project. So I'm going to save it. I'm just going to call this Lab3. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to shut iWars now, just because brass won't run if I have iWars open. I'm going to add a task group and call this test weapon. I'm now going to add my two scenarios. Existing scenario. Let's see, they're over here. Lab3 test weapon. Add scenario from an existing analysis. All right, so I'm going to run each of these for 90 seconds. And I'm going to, while the tutorial says to run it once, or run it twice, I'm going to run them 10 times each, just for good measure. I'm going to create an analysis file. Add analysis. From a new analysis, it's going to ask me where to save it. I'll just call it test weapon analysis. Hit save. It's not going to let me edit it until after I run my scenarios. And I'm going to add save results. So I'm going to run the two scenarios. And they're now running. So now that it's run, I can unclick those two and click my analysis file and edit an output analysis tool. So we have our analysis tool that opens up, and I'm going to go over here to victim scoreboard. I'm actually going to close the agent behaviors. Again, the agent behavior shows every single action that happens in the scenario. So let me get rid of this one too, and I'm just going to create a new one. So plus, let's go to agent death. Suppose we want to see the changes on blue and red. So we can get rid of that time, and we can add an agent unit force. So if I hit run analysis, it shows me for each run, for test weapon and then M16, how many KIA I had. Just because it's easier to look at in Excel, I'm going to switch this to a split count for the force. Now I'm going to run analysis, and it shows the blue and the red separately. So you can see with the test weapon, then every instant, all 4 of our red agents died, and in no cases did all 4 of our blue agents die. Now over here with the M16, you can see because the red agents don't have armor, and I left armor in for my blue forces, they tended to do a little bit better and they killed all the red agents. However, you can see that they took considerably more casualties, and there was this one case, run 12 with the M16s, where our blue agents got wiped out by the red agents. Alright, so that concludes this tutorial. In this tutorial, you learned how to edit the database and create a new weapon in iWars.